Everybody, welcome to Mentor Minutes. I'm Jared.
I'm Jay.
And this is a podcast episode on YouTube and streamed across various streaming services if you're listening there, associated with the YouTube channel Meeple Mentor, where if you haven't seen it, we do tutorial videos for medium to heavyweight complex games. We've done lore videos, unboxings. What else?
Interviews.
Sure, interviews. So if you haven't, head on over to the YouTube channel and check that out. And we do appreciate all the likes, comments, and subscribes that we get. It helps us do what we do. So for this episode, we're on episode 7.
Yep.
Can you believe it? It's been...
I know, it feels like it's like
I feel like
3.
we just started.
I feel the same way, but this has been a lot of fun.
It's been cool.
Yes.
So this time we're going to continue on with the top 10 games series. And
Yes.
This is what, top 10 over 20?
This is top 10 over 20, and this covers the range of 1990 to 99?
91 to 2000.
That's it. Exactly right. Exactly what I said.
Just what you said, 91 to 2000.
Yes.
So games in the 90s that came out in the 90s.
Yes. And interestingly, I thought I was going to have a lot more games, and it was going to be harder to come up with this list. But most of the games that I thought were going to be in this list were actually newer, more recent, and
Like
I would have
2000s.
I would have sworn that they were in the 90s, but still, I think a great year or a great decade
Right.
for games, and a lot of my favorites are actually on this list too.
So I'll also say that I thought this was going to be a little easier, but I'm going to include a lot on this list, as you'll see, that are more nostalgic for me, because even though there's a lot of great games that came out in the 90s, I haven't played them all. And so if I haven't played it, I can't include it on my list. So this is just a personal, opinionated list. So in the comments, I know you're going to say, why isn't this on the list? I can answer it now. That's why I haven't played it.
Yeah, same with me. There was definitely some standouts that I saw that had I played, they might have made this list, but I haven't had the opportunity to play them.
And I've seen so many from this decade that it's like, oh, I've been recommended this. I've been, I've heard of this, and I've heard that's great, but I have nothing to add to say or anything. So this is a very personal list, but I think it's a good list. I'm excited to talk about these.
Yeah, I mean, some great games came out over those 10 years, and some of the ones I'm definitely still playing today. So
Yeah, sure.
yeah, cool.
So I think we should go ahead and get right into it.
Let's do it.
With number 10. Number 10. So for my number 10, it's a party game classic that most of you have probably played or played with your family, especially around Christmas time, since that's where we are right now. It's from 1999, Apples to Apples.
Yes.
Yep. It's that party card game where you've got your green cards and your red cards, and the player draws a green card, and basically everyone has to play one of their 7 red cards that they think will be chosen by the judge. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean that their card matches what the green card is exactly, but rather what they think that person's going to pick, whether it be because it's funny or accurate or what. And that's, I think, what's great about this game is it's really a good game to get to know people, and the more you know someone, the better you're probably going to do at winning this game.
Yeah, and it's also one of those just fun games where there's a lot of like humorous moments, and everybody's played this game.
Yeah,
so it's an easy one to pull out.
And this came out in the 90s, so it's on my list.
Yep, good pick. It's actually inspired a lot of games too that I like Say Anything is a game that's very similar to that.
Sure,
that
there's
like
a lot of
too.
those types of like, give me your answer to this type
Yes.
of games. I don't know what you would call that, but Apples to Apples is a good one that sort of pioneered a lot of that.
Good pick. That was a slightly lower than my 10, but I think maybe just because I played it so much too.
Yeah.
Okay, so my number 10 is actually a Spiel des Jahres winner, and it's called Mississippi Queen. It came out in 1997. This is an interesting. I like racing games, and this is a race game where you have a steamship, on the Mississippi, and you're trying to win the race, but you're also trying to pick up like at least a couple like Southern Belles, which are these little characters at certain like ports.
Yeah.
In order to win the game, you have to have had picked up at least 2 of them, and then win the race.
Sure.
But the neat thing about the game is you can adjust the speed and the turning. So it's each grid is sort of modular, but they're all hexagon type shapes. So you can turn your ship, and then you can go a certain speed. But in order to pick up, the passengers, you have to be going at a speed that it says on the board. So if you're going too fast or too, you can't pick them up. Actually,
like run them over.
Yeah, the ship will go by and they'll fall in the water or something.
Oh dear.
But the reason I like it as a cool racing game is you never really know what the track is going to look like, because each of the pieces is modular. So as one ship gets to the edge of the board, you roll a dice, and that's going to determine where the next tile fits in. Almost like the game El Dorado.
Yeah.
Only you don't know what the setup is from the beginning. So it could be
like
that
you're a winding river that you don't necessarily
you could
get
be
to
like
see.
way on the right side, and then the river actually ends up going to the left, and then you've got to really course correct and stuff.
And so it's being a race. That's a very important thing to be like. Just kind of stay towards the center.
Yeah, sometimes it's better to be second, because then you're going to see which way the river's turning. When the next person gets there. So, Mississippi Queen, my number 10.
Good pick. Number 9.
Okay, my number 9 is a 2-player card game. It was originally called Battle Line, but they came out with a version called Shot and Totten. This is by Rainer Knizia. And the way the game's played, this came out in 1999, is you both have warring clans, like Scottish clans, and your cards are in different suits based on the clan types and different numbers. And you're both playing where you have like a row of these tiles that represent stones in the middle of the board. I think there's 7 of them. And you're playing the best hand of 3 cards near the stones on your side to try to push that stone forward. And if you get, if you get 3 stones or 5 stones forward, then you win the game essentially. So you're doing like runs and sets and things like that. And then the person opposite you can play in that same behind that same stone you're playing, and whoever's hand is the strongest, that's the way the stone's going to move, and you win those things. So it's a really kind of Lost Cities like feel type of card game, where you're never really sure what your opponent's going to do. It's always tense. You have a specific hand of like 6 cards, so there's choices you're going to be making and commitments you have to make early on in the game that can really ruin your plans later on. But a cool game. Yellow produces this now and has really cool artwork as well. So that's my number 9, Shot and Totten.
Cool. I'll have to try that. I've never even played that.
Yeah, it's really good. Really good.
Yeah, that's awesome. So my number 9 is another party game, and the last party game that I'll talk about on any of these lists. I can guarantee. From 1994, a game called Catchphrase, which is very easy to transport. It's a great game that it's got a built-in timer. It's a little electronic device, and you can either select a category or just go through all the categories, and it'll give you a random like thing or person or place or whatever. You've got teams. It's usually 2 teams, so you split up half and half, and then you alternate in a circle. So one team, and then the next person's the other team, and back and forth. So as you're playing, the timer's going, and when it gets to you, you have to try to get your teammates around the circle to guess what it is.
Yep.
And you can't say what it is, and there's certain other, like maybe rules that you can't say certain things, or it starts with a T or whatever. But essentially, if they guess it, then you quickly pass it to the opponent next to you, and then they have to hit the button, and it gives them a new word. And if they can, do it, then they can pass it. It's like hot potato with like guessing words,
Right.
So it's called Catchphrase. I feel like everybody played this in the 90s.
Yes, definitely.
Every house that I went to, when they were like, hey, what board games do you have? They'd be like, oh, well, we have Catchphrases. And I'm like, okay, yeah.
Yep.
Like everybody had it. So if you haven't played it, it might be because you're younger. But I think if you've lived through the 90s, then you've likely already played this. But
definitely.
it's a great game. So I put it on my list from 1994.
Yeah, good pick. I always like that game too, and it's one of those really fun, laugh out loud party games too, especially if you're passing and the timer ends, and
or if you pass and accidentally hit the time button.
Right.
And they're like, no, it's like you meant to do that.
Yeah. Good. That's very good. Very good pick.
Thanks. Number 8. So my number 8 pick is from 1993, and a lot of you may have missed this, but if you get a chance to play it, it's a lot of fun. It's a family game. It's like a game that you might play as a kid or with kids. It's called 13 Dead End Drive, and there's also, I think they reprinted it as 1313 Dead End Drive.
That's the version I've played.
Okay.
Yep.
But the original, which I still have, is 13 Dead End Drive. And it's basically a murder mystery party where someone has died and you're trying to figure out like who killed them. And you're also murdering other people in the dinner party.
Yeah. There's like an inheritance or something.
Yeah, they're all trying to get the money. It's kind of like Knives Out, maybe.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy. Yeah,
right.
It's very much like that movie. Yeah.
Modern movie, but very old game. So you all start at the center, like at the dinner table, and then everyone just like breaks off and moves around and does whatever they want. And you can set traps, and you can like kill people, and you're trying to knock people out, and then remove the frame card so that your frame is the one showing. If I remember,
you get the money.
So that you get the money, and then if you're the last one standing or the one that like ends the game whenever the timer or whatever whatever the mechanism was, and your picture's on the frame, then you win the game. A lot of it's kind of gimmicky because of all the different traps, and there is some setup involved with all the cardboard,
almost Mousetrap like.
Yeah, it definitely takes a cue from Mousetrap.
Yep.
But it's not as, I guess when you played Mousetrap, I feel like most of the time the game was pretty dull and all you wanted to do was just do the traps. But this actually has a good game to it.
I agree.
And the traps always worked. So I feel like those are just makes it a much better game in general than Mousetrap. Now, of course, if you're looking for a game that's for a young player, maybe the murder theme isn't quite appropriate, but it's done very light and a very family-friendly way.
Kind of cartoony.
Yeah, it's even lighter than I'd say Clue is, if you want to talk about that.
I think so.
So if you get a chance to play it, it's a lot of fun, and it's like 30-40 minute game.
Yeah, I this would have made my list, but I had only played the 1313 version, and it was one of the games that got me into the hobby too.
Oh, really?
And my family really liked it, so I still love that game.
Excellent. Well, check it out.
Cool, good pick.
What's your number 8?
Okay, my number 8. I've actually mentioned this on a list of underrated games.
I knew it. I knew it.
And I couldn't not mention this one because I do like it so much. And this is another Spiel des Jahres winner. This is Manhattan from 1994.
Nice.
And this is a family weight area control game. With really pretty pieces that you're like city pieces that you're putting on the board. So you're building these buildings, and you're getting points for whoever has the highest building and whoever has the most building of their color in like a certain district in New York, and a few other ways to score points. But it's a fun game. You all get to start by building things, and then you're trying to get majorities in areas and compete for certain districts around the board. I think there's like 6 of them or so. And it's fun because you're only using cards, and you're playing based on where the sort of grid on the card is telling you to play. And so depending on what cards you kind of draw randomly, that'll sort of limit your options for where you can build. So you can't just always attack one player, which is cool because of the way the cards are distributed. And this is a game that you can teach in like 5 minutes. And the newer copies actually have translucent pieces, so you can get a version that's in print today that just looks gorgeous on the table. So
nice.
That's my number 8 pick, Manhattan.
Sweet. I love the crossover of the underrated stuff.
Yes.
If
that's my only one, though.
Okay, if you haven't checked that out, we do have a top 10 underrated games, which I think is our episode 2 of the podcast.
Yes.
So you might want to rewind and check that out.
Definitely.
Number 7.
Okay, my number 7 is by one of my favorite designers, Rainer Knizia. And he was the same guy that developed Schottentotten.
There you go.
And I think the 90s were like one of the decades where he just had a bunch of games that were
a lot of hits.
really, really good. And
made his name in the 90s.
He definitely did. And this one is called Medici. And Medici is a fun auction set collection type game where the points that you earn, you're actually bidding those points in order to take like the first pick at specific cards that come out. It's supposedly has a theme where you're bidding for goods, you're taking goods and putting them in your ship, but the theme is really pretty irrelevant. What you're doing is you're bidding with your victory points to try to get the sets that you want of cards, and then whoever collects the most cards in a specific set kind of moves up on these tracks. And as you move higher in the tracks, you get more points. And whoever at the end of the game has the most points, as most games, wins. But the cool thing about this is it's I do like auction games. I like the fact that you can compete and not only to collect goods, but also to have like the highest value of the goods in the ships. And both of those get you points. But that tension of how many of my victory points am I willing to spend to get what I want and hopefully be able to then earn more points than what I just spent is just this sort of great like pull and push kind of mechanism.
Kind of a push your luck almost.
It can be push your luck, especially if you're one of the people at the auction who keeps passing on things, because it could be that you end up getting a lot of great cards for like less victory points.
Right.
But it also could mean that the auction ends prematurely and then you get stuck with, like subpar cards or whatever.
Sure.
But still classic, still in print, Medici. That's my number 7.
Sweet. Good pick. So my number 7 is a card game that came out in 1998 by the name of Guillotine, which is a really fun and hilarious theme of the French Revolution, where there's 3 days of lining up the nobles and noblemen to the guillotine to have their heads chopped off.
Yeah.
And so heads will roll.
Yeah.
So in the game, you're playing cards on your turn, maybe 1 or 2 you're allowed to play to alter the line. And you are essentially trying to alter the line so that you always take the most valuable noble head at the front of the guillotine line and then leave the less valuable ones for your opponents. There's a set collection element. There's different card color types, as well as certain cards that say, like, maybe I think the Palace Guard is worth 1 point for every other Palace Guard you have. So you get 1, they're worth 1, you get 2, each one's worth 2. So there's set collection, but there's also like pairs. I think if you get like the king and queen or whatnot, they get a bonus. So you're always thinking of like, which one do I want to get and which one can I leave, for my opponent to get, assuming they don't play a card that mixes up the line a little bit. It's a fast-paced game. I mean, it doesn't play very long, but it's always fun. It's hilarious because of the nature of the game. And you can play it with pretty much all ages if you're okay with the theme. But once again, I'm sorry with this murderous themes.
Yeah, there's a pattern here.
I know, right? But no, it's okay. Like I've played it with my 7-year-old and she thinks it's funny. It's not anything I'm too concerned about. But it's a lot of fun and it's a little card game you can just take with you. So if you get the chance to play it or put it in your car for a travel type of game to bring, over the holidays, check out Guillotine.
Yeah, this is one I definitely need to play. I've never played it, but I've always been told it's fun, so you have to teach this one to me.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Number 6. So moving on to number 6 on the list, from 1993, this is a... It's a murder mystery type of game.
Really?
I'm so
surprised.
That's my theme this time. I have a lot of good memories of playing this with my family and like other family friends that came over. It's called Crack the Case from '93, and it's essentially a box with all these different cards of a scenario of this is what you give to everybody, and then that team has to then ask questions to try to uncover the mystery. And you can, I think, get up to like 3 clues, but your points that you get for solving it go down every time you get a clue. Yeah. But you ask essentially it's like 20 questions kind of thing, where it's like, okay, well, was it this, or did it involve this, or that sort of stuff. Some of those classic riddles that you might have heard of, like, oh, it was a guy like standing on ice and it melted, and that's how he got hung or whatever. But it's that, but like extrapolated more deeply, and there's like tons of these murder mystery cards that you can play through. So if you, my sister, this was like her favorite game, and she would just sit there and read them. And so whenever we play, like she knew all of them already, so funny. It wasn't really fair.
So she gamed the system.
Well, I mean, she was younger, so she just did it. I mean, but yeah, she definitely gamed the system. But if you haven't played it, then I think you should definitely check it out if you like that sort of murder mystery where it's just trying to puzzle things out with your friends, and just ask questions and try to come to the answer, and it's just a lot of fun.
It sounds really cool. I've never played this.
Yeah,
but it sounds a lot of fun.
I mean, I think it's very underrated because I mean it's well done, but I felt like a lot of people hadn't played it before.
Yeah, I think my kids would like this too.
Yeah,
so.
but we had it growing up, and we played it all the time, and to the point where I've seen all of the cards now, of course.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
But it's a good one. Check it out.
Neat. I like it.
So Jay, what's your number 6?
So my number 6 is, although when I say the name, you'll think it's a murder-themed game.
Uh-oh.
But it's actually not. And in fact, it's so different than the other versions of this game that it's almost unrecognizable. And that game is Clue, the Great Museum Caper. And this game came out in 1997. And the reason it's different is because you're not trying to find out, who the murderer was, the murder weapon, or like what room. Yeah. What this is it's really a museum heist game. And it also has hidden movement. So it's a 1 versus many game where the board is this, like, it's a 3D board, which is really cool. It's a museum. There's different rooms in the museum that have different colored, floors. And then there are these artwork pictures that are all standees that are spread around in the different rooms.
Yep.
And as the thief, your goal is to try to steal so many paintings and escape the museum before you get caught by the other players. Mm-hmm. So as the thief, your piece is not on the museum board, but you're going to be moving on the same grid behind a screen. Yeah. And then the other players have the ability to roll a die and activate like cameras. There's this line of sight mechanism there. If they can see you, you have to tell them like where you are, and nice. all these sort of neat kind of Scotland Yard like mechanics to try to pit yourself against the other players. This is a game I've owned for a while. It's still a really fun game.
Yeah.
And I think one of the best early sort of hidden movement type games that came out. I'd rank this one up there with Scotland Yard.
Wow.
For how good it is.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
I love games like that. So this is one that, from the sounds of things, I need to try.
We should play it. The only thing with this game is, obviously you have to get it aftermarket now because it's not still in print. And it's one of those like old school, like huge boxes that takes up like a totally unreasonable amount of space. Yeah. So you can't fit it on a game shelf. But
it's like, let me head to the attic and pull this thing out.
Yeah, it's crazy like that. But still a great game. That's Clue, the Great Museum Caper.
Great pick. Number 5.
Okay, we're going to keep with the theme here of Reiner Knizia games.
Oh boy. So far we've had murder stuff.
Yep.
Murder.
German mathematicians. Those are the themes. Murders and German mathematicians.
There you go.
But this one is
planned.
not planned at all.
No.
And we've not had any crossovers either. Which is
fun. That's pretty good so far.
So this is it's another auction style game, which Reiner Knizia is really known for auction games. But it's a card game, and it's called High Society.
Ooh.
And this plays up to 5 players. What's so cool about this game is it has a theme that actually really comes out. And most of his games are very abstract. Like this is one where you're all playing like nobility, and you have a hand of cards that are all your different denominations. So everybody has the same amount of money starting out. But the individual denominations don't just go like from 1 to 10. They skip over numbers. So you might have like a 1, a 2, a 4, a 7. So, however he mathed it out, it works great in the game. And the goal of the game is you're bidding on like these different, basically, objects like, paintings and things like that. And there's 10 cards in the game that are numbered 1 to 10. And obviously 10 is like the most valuable. So you're bidding to see who gets the most, possessions at the end of the game. Because it's, again, you're members of high society. But the cool thing about the end of the game is even if you have the most possessions based on what you've bid, if you have the least amount of money left over, you lose automatically. So it becomes a game where it makes the tension of those auctions really spectacular because you're always agonizing over, am I spending too much for this thing to where I'm at the end of the game, I might have the most stuff, but I have the least amount of money and I'm completely eliminated.
Yeah.
So cool game. It has some twists with double points, multipliers, and things like that.
Nice.
But still one that is in print and you can get today with great artwork. and that is High Society.
Very cool, very cool. All right, so my number 5 pick on this list from 1996. This is a game that also made it to my top 10 underrated games.
Okay.
And that came out in the 90s, and it's another card game called Lunch Money, where it's basically a big deck of cards with a bunch of uppercuts, punches, dodges, blocks, and all sorts of roundhouse kicks. And everyone gets 5 cards, and you can target anybody you want. You just start playing a card, and they have to either block it or dodge, or you can counterattack, you can grab. There's all sorts of combos in this game. It's a lot of fun. It may be out of print, but I think they came up with Beer Money afterwards, which has a very similar type of gameplay. There's also an expansion. It's like a little mini card deck expansion called Sticks and Stones. The only downside to this game is that there's no text on the card to tell you what the cards do. Yeah. So it really takes 1 or 2 plays for everybody to get comfortable with what all the cards are and what they do and how you can use them effectively. But once you've got it, it becomes a very fast-paced, very fun, brutal game because I mean you're in your imagination, like you're beating everybody up pretty senselessly, and it encourages you to at times be descriptive in how you're attacking these people.
It's funny.
So if that sounds up your alley and you're looking for like kind of that dueling sort of thing where there's like combos and kickbacks and stuff, like that's a good one to play.
Yeah, and when we made that original list of underrated games, I had not played it.
Yep.
But then you taught it to me, and it was fun. It was a fun experience, and I enjoyed it. So I definitely played again.
Absolutely. So check it out, Lunch Money. Number 4. Okay, so for number 4, all of these top 4 are going to be games that are going to be more widely known, more widely appreciated in respect to the games that they are for this decade. That came out in 1993, a card game called Magic: The Gathering, which you have to put it on this list. I mean, not only is it a great game, and it's had so many not only expansions, but like seasons that come out and like all these different productions, and they've got the tier 2 decks and the Friday Night Magic, and I mean this is the bread and butter of your local game store.
Still
even today. And I mean it's 2020. All right. So 1993, this game comes out and rocked the world and never stopped. Like, it's still going strong. So I played this for several years with some friends in college, and we did, like 4 or 5, people, and you can kind of just target whoever you wanted. But it's usually played one-on-one. But we'd play it over, the long nights, and part of this game is building your deck and like buying the cards, and you can have up to 4 copies of a single card in the deck of 1 copy, other than lands, which are your they provide mana, which is how you play cards. So if you haven't played it but you like card games, and especially ones that you're building engines and customizing your deck, highly competitive and has its own scene within the gaming community, Magic: The Gathering is amazing, and for me, it had to be on this list.
I think the fact that this is not going to be a crossover, but only in the fact that I've not played it. And
shame.
And the reason I didn't play it is because I got into games later in life, so it was one of those things that if I had known about it, I probably would have played it. But undeniable. I think it's a great pick.
Huge influence on card games in general and board games in general.
Yes, yeah. My number 4, keeping with the theme, is another Reiner Knizia game. Who knew?
Shocker.
And this is a game called Through the Desert. This came out in 1998. Nice. Again, still in print. This is a really cool game because you have these caravans of camels, and as you're putting the camels out, you're trying to sort of section off parts of the board, capture like oases, which give you points, and also try to cut off other players who are also placing their camels in these lines from capturing their pieces of the board. So it's very points based, but it's kind of area control in a way as well. But it's just with the deserts, the cute theme. This is a super easy game to teach anybody. Another one that you can play with the family. And I think the theming alone, I mean, I still play this one probably a couple times a year. So Through the Desert is my number 4.
Right. Good pick. That's another one that I've been told to play, but I haven't played it, so I can't put it on my list.
Yeah, and it plays good with 2 or more.
Number 3.
Okay, I don't want to disappoint anybody with my number 3 pick. So I'm going to go with another Reiner Knizia game. This is my I think my wife's favorite game.
You know this isn't a top 10 Knizia game.
It's not, but I could totally do that. It's 1999, and it's a 2-player game called Lost Cities. This is a game I think a lot of people have played.
You've already brought it up on this video.
I've brought it up on this video. That was a little bit of foreshadowing.
Wow.
It actually plays somewhat close to Shot and Totten too. But the what you're doing is, again, you're on both sides of sort of this deck of cards, and you're trying to get majorities in different card colors. But you have to do it so that you start with whatever card you start with. The next card you play in your set of, say, blue has to be a higher numbered card than what you just played. So you can skip things. So you can play a 1, and then you can play a 3 after that. But you always have to go up. And the trick to the game is, obviously your opponent is playing for those same cards, and there's only one of each card in the whole deck. So if you win blue, the other person can't win blue, basically. And at the end of the game, you add all your points up from the cards, so whatever the numbers are on the cards, and then you automatically subtract 20 points from that. So if your set of cards, like say you get a 1, a 5, and a 6, that's 12 points, I think. You're going to end up with -8 for that set, because you need to at least get above 20 per set to even get any points in the game. So it's another one that's really tight. The game ends as soon as the draw pile is empty. So as you're either on your turn, you're basically just putting a card down and picking one up. That's all you're doing the whole game. But as you have a hand of cards and it gets near the end of the game, the tension of trying to get rid of your hand before that discard pile is empty is just like a really it's like a delicious tension, I gotta say. And this is a stressful game for me, but it's a lot of fun. And like I said, one of my wife's favorite games that we play a lot.
Nice.
Lost Cities is my number 3.
That sounds like to me is a more recent game called Arboretum, where you also are building, sort of a connection of increasing valued cards, and whoever has the most in their hand gets to score them. And like you were saying, it's all about like collecting them, but not having too much.
Yeah, I agree with you, because it's a little less thinky than Arboretum, because you're not worried about like patterns, but it's very much the same too, where you can hold cards in your hand that deny the other person,
right,
because they're going to go for that card.
Sure.
So there's that as well of playing cards, but then not wanting to give up something that's going to help your opponent too.
So for those who've played Arboretum, should they check out Lost City?
I think you'd like it. I think it's a little simpler, but it has that same sort of feel when it comes to that 2-player tension. So nice. yeah, that's a good parallel.
Cool. So my number 3 is from 1995. This is the game that brought Euros to America and popularized, that concept, and it's Settlers of Catan, or Catan, and it changed its name later to Catan. So when I played it, and my copy is an older one, so it still says The Settlers of Catan. And it's originally for 4 players, but you can get a 5 to 6 player expansion to play with up to 6 people. It was the game to play if you're, in college, essentially. And it's at the time it came out, no one had seen anything like it. I mean, there's no player elimination. There's very little randomness. The wooden pieces were all very new. Like, no one had seen that kind of stuff before. The random layout and nature of the board itself was also very unique at the time, because normally you'd pull out like Sorry or Monopoly and just it never changes. But Catan had this, ever-changing, always replayable game that is different every time you play it. Even the numbers that get placed out there were different. So it really revolutionized game design in America, but also invigorated gamers to appreciate different types of games. And so it really opened the door, and I say that like every meaning possible for all other strategy games, particularly from Europe, but also more Euro-y, but also strategy games to be developed in America. And now to this day, there is less of a distinction between what is a Euro and what is a Ameritrash and whatever. But you wouldn't have those distinctions if it didn't all start with Catan.
Yeah.
So I put it as number 3 on my list because it is that influential, and it's still a good game, and it has endless expansions and versions that you can get.
Yes. Yeah, and still huge seller today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Huge seller. It's kind of like modern gamers Monopoly in a way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is not going to be a crossover either, and not because I haven't played it. I think, credit where credit is due. I think Catan and Magic are got to be the top, on this list regardless. It's just not a game that I enjoy as much anymore.
Like when you didn't put Dungeons and Dragons on your list.
Same thing. Although I had, yeah, exactly. That's true. Although I haven't played that one as much. But, and I like Catan, but because it's led to so many games that I just love so much more, I just really don't play it much anymore. So that's the only reason it didn't make my list.
Sure.
But
totally understand.
Definitely a great game.
Number 2. So number 2 on my list is from 2000. So shortly after Catan came another game from the same designer, Carcassonne. This game is, I think, leaps and bounds better than Catan, and also sort of an entry-level Euro game that brought Euros to another point. And it's almost like if you're kind of bored or done with Catan, you're going to move into Carcassonne. Because, I mean, how could you not? Like, it's the same designer. It's got a very similar feel, same kind of component-looking type stuff. And if you didn't know, this is the game where the term Meeple comes from.
Yes.
Not because the designer came up with it, but there was a lady who was playing Carcassonne and said, hey, I've got my Meeples over here. And then it just caught on.
Yeah.
And she's credited with it, and then Carcassonne adapted it, and now it's part of every printing, as...
in gaming culture in general.
And now it's gaming culture as far as board games go, and that's why, you see Meeple Mentor is a thing.
Right.
Now, it's not only that design, that wooden shape of a person, it's also... all wooden pieces that are yours in a game that is played on a table as a meeple. So it's a great game to play. It's a very easy one to teach. Gameplay wise, you just draw a tile and you place it, and then you choose whether or not you want to place one of your meeples there. And then if you can complete whatever it's standing on by the end of the game or whatever, you pick it back up and score points. I mean, that's the rules.
Yeah.
So if you haven't played it, I highly recommend you do. There's a lot of expansions to this as well, and each one is great, but I think if you just even start with the basic, and then you can add on from there. If you're looking for my recommendation for your first Carcassonne expansion, I would go with The River, and then anything else after that.
This isn't on my list, but only because I like the version of this game so much better than the original, and that's Carcassonne Amazonas. And it has a river in it too, interestingly, and has a little bit of race element. So I like the tile building with a little bit of extra. But Vanilla Carcassonne is one that you can introduce to anybody. So yeah, awesome pick. Okay, so my number 2 is a game by Rudiger Dorn, and came out in 1997 called For Sale. So breaking with the Reiner Knizia theme.
You surprised me now.
Although it is an auction game.
Well, okay, never mind.
So For Sale is a really cool game because it's a game that has 2 completely distinct phases to the game.
Phase 1.
Phase 1 and Phase 2, yes.
That's pretty distinct.
Isn't it distinct? Not in just the naming.
Oh, okay. Go on.
So Phase 1, you all have a certain amount of money that you start the game with, and you're bidding on properties. So you're bidding, and the properties in the deck of cards, they go from value 1 to value 30. So like value 1 property is like a card with a picture of like a cardboard box in an alley. You're right. Like a value 2 is like an outhouse or something.
Boy.
And then all the way up to like, values in the 20s are like mansions, and then like value 30 is like International Space Station.
Whoa.
Right. So you're bidding, and it's just traditional bidding. You're bidding and you keep going around until somebody passes. But for everybody that passes, they actually get half their money back that they've bid, and the other half goes to the bank, whereas the winner all their money goes to the bank.
Makes sense.
So once everybody's bid and everybody has a hand of cards, because one of the other kind of neat things that I'm just remembered about the game is as soon as you pass, you then also take the very lowest value property as well. So you could get a property for free in this game too if you pass. But the second phase of the game now is now you have your hand of all your property cards. Then all these checks come out, and the checks range from like $0 to like $15,000. And then there's this simultaneous play where everybody picks one card, reveal them at the same time, and whoever has the highest value property gets the highest amount of check for the property. So you do that in phase 2, and then at the end of the game, whoever has the most money wins. So another one that's super easy to teach new players. This is one of my go-to games for brand new players. It's simple to teach. It's easy to play. It's a lot of fun and still in print. They even have a smaller travel version. That's my number 2, For Sale.
Cool. Good pick. Good pick. Number 1. So before we go on to our number 1 picks, I want to take a brief moment to let you know that our Meeple Mentor YouTube channel and the podcast, Mentor Minutes, are all associated with the Gateway Network, which started from the Gamecasters podcast. And the network is a group of content creators for board gaming content. And it spans YouTubers, it spans Instagrammers, artists. There's even I featured Meeple People, which was a nice comedy series that's done on YouTube, so you can go watch that right now.
It's great.
There's podcasters as well, so we're part of that network, and we wanted to shout out that you check that out. In the description, you can find a link and find more content creators that are up and coming or small but are rising fast. So
definitely check them out.
I do want to mention that, and so thanks for our friends over at the network for being part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's cool to be part of a growing network like that has so much talent in it. So
totally.
Yeah, very cool.
So Jay, let's move on. What's your number 1 pick? Everybody wants to know.
Okay, it's not a Reiner Knizia game.
Okay,
it's not an auction game.
Is it a murder themed?
It's not murder themed. This is, I think, the best area control game ever made.
Wow. Heard it here first.
At 5 players. At exactly 5 players.
There's a qualification.
Yeah, and it's called El Grande. It came out in 1995, and it's typical. I mean, it spawned a lot of area control games that you see now, so it's nothing you hadn't seen before if you play it, except for one twist. You're at the beginning, you're bidding for cards, and the cards give you the abilities to put your caballeros in specific regions of Spain, essentially. And you're getting points based on the specific regions and how much they're worth, etc. But there's also this Castillo, which is this cardboard tower that's also in the middle of the board. And you can put your meeples, your little caballeros in that tower as well. Because at the end of the round, when you're divvying out points, the last thing you do is you reveal all the meeples in the tower, and then whoever has the majority can then assign some of those meeples to other places on the board to win majorities or move them around and that kind of thing. There's also, I want to say it's a governor. I forget the term, but there's a big pawn that's also
the robber.
It's like a robber almost, but it gets moved around, and you can't you can't build or take over areas that where the governor controls and or move meeples in and out of it. So there's some twists there, but just a really satisfying area control game that it seems like it never gets old. It also has some great expansions too to add some flavor to the game, but it does not play well with lower player counts. That's the big criticism. But if you have 4 or especially 5 players, this is like a go-to game for 5 players, and that's my number 1, El Grande.
Nice. The big,
yes.
if you don't speak Spanish.
That's right.
Very cool. I've not played that one, but yeah, I mean, you have a copy?
I do. Sweet. I've got the big box, so it's got all the expansions and stuff in it.
The big box.
The big box.
Right? All right, so my number 1 pick, which also made my top 10 underrated games list, from 1994, and I have played every release of this game. I actually have 2 of them on my shelf. Robo Rally.
Ah, right. Yes.
It's amazing, and it can play up to 8 people and 6 if you're using the new version. Now, if you haven't played it, it's a programming game where you've got cards every turn that you can lay down face down on one of these 5 phases, and then everybody simultaneously goes one at a time through each phase, flipping their card and simultaneously moving their robot on the factory floor. They have to avoid other players' robots and avoid the walls and the factory obstacles. There's gears, there's
conveyor belts,
there's lasers, all kinds of things that are going to mess up where you are or how much damage you're taking. So it's not necessarily a battle, but you can just try to kill them, because if you die 3 times, you're done.
Right.
Including if you fall off a ledge or roll right off the board. It gets crazy the more players there are in the game, because then you have less impact on where you're actually going, because now it matters who is coming at you and what their influence level is. And it's essentially a race, and it's totally customizable. Of course, there's maps that come that recommend, placing the checkpoints at certain places. But you can use any or all of, the boards and make your own map and put the checkpoint pieces wherever you really want, and make the game as short or as long as you want based on those checkpoints and where you put them. So Robo Rally has all these different editions, which all have their pluses and minuses, which I'm not going to get into, but I highly recommend you pick it up if you get a chance, because it's just raucous, chaotic fun.
Yeah, and it's also designed by Richard Garfield of Magic the Gathering, which is a plus.
And number 2 from the list. So that makes our top 10s, and I think, anything else you wanted to add?
No, just play more Ryan Your Kiditsi games, I think, is the main
Stick around, because we're going to be continuing this with at least one more episode of our top 10 over 10, so games that came out in the 2000s.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a tougher list for us to make because of all the great games that came out in that decade, I know.
Very hard.
So stick around, make sure you subscribe on YouTube, or follow us on all the Spotifys and Apple Podcasts or whatever.
Thanks.
I've been Jared.
I've been Jay.
We'll see you next time.
Yep, catch you later.